1.1.1 Parent Functions. Essential question: what are parent functions and why are they important for understanding the behavior of more complex functions? Skills: I can identify parent functions and I can identify the inverses of parent functions. Let's go over some of the most common parent functions you'll see. This graph right here is linear. The parent function for this is f of x equals x. And the inverse is also f inverse of x is x. This one right here is absolute value. It's a V shape. The function is f of x equals the absolute value of x. Has two bars on it. The inverse could be two different things depending on the restricted domain. F inverse of x is either plus or minus x. This one right here is a reciprocal function. Rational odd degree. The function is f of x equals 1 over x. The inverse, f inverse of x, is also 1 over x. This U-shaped function is called quadratic. It's a type of parabola. It could also be called a square. The function is f of x equals x squared. And the inverse function is f inverse of x, and it can either equal positive or negative square root x depending on the restricted domain. This one right here is a cubic function. The function is written as f of x equals x to the third power x cubed. The inverse, f inverse of x, is equal to the cube root of x. This one is an exponential. The formula for this is f of x equals b to the x power, where b is some number that is greater than 0. Common numbers they use for b is 2, e, which is close to 2, and 10. But it could be any number as long as it's greater than 0. And then the inverse, f inverse of x, is equal to log base b of x. And again, b has to be greater than 0. This function right here is a cube root. It's the inverse of a cubic function. So we just switch these. F of x equals the cube root of x, and then the inverse, f inverse of x, is equal to x cubed. This was logarithmic. It's the inverse of exponential. We have f of x equals log b of x, where b is greater than 0, and then the inverse, f inverse of x, equals b to the x, where b is greater than 0. This one is a square root function. It's half of a quadratic on its side. F of x equals the square root of x, and then the inverse, f inverse of x, equals x squared. This one right here is called a sine function. It's a sinusoidal function, a trig function. We have f of x equals sine of x. And then the inverse is f inverse of x equals arc sine of x. This one right here is a tangent function. We write that as f of x equals tangent of x. And then the inverse is f inverse of x equals arc tangent of x. And then the last one here, it's a reciprocal sinusoidal function. It's secant. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. You'd write that as this: f of x equals secant of x, and then the inverse, f inverse of x equals arc secant of x. I would recommend making some flashcards to remember each of these graphs with their names and with their equations and their inverses.